All right, folks. We are here today in Belém, here in Lisbon, about 10 minutes west of the downtown area. This is a beautiful area of Lisbon, in my opinion. There's a lot to see here. You have the monastery, which is behind the camera on the other side, and you also have this massive monument here. This right here is called Padrão dos Descobrimentos. Now, if you were to ask the Portuguese would tell you that this monument is supposed to represent the bravery of these young men who went off and discovered the New World during the Age of Explorations. If you know anything about history, you can see how that's a very European perspective. That is not the perspective of a lot of places that the Portuguese went and discovered. I have been a Black history tour guide for the last 6 months, and I've learned a lot about the Portuguese colonial history, and I've had a lot of interesting interactions online and in person with some Portuguese people who were maybe slavery apologists or maybe colonial apologists. And there's a lot of the same arguments that I see over and over again. The main one I see is that the Portuguese were not the worst. That we weren't the worst ones. You know, we went out and we did some bad things, of course, but you know, other countries, the French and the Dutch and the Belgians, they were, by far worse, and they were more violent and, brutal in their colonialism. So I thought that today we'd come to Belém in front of this monument dedicated towards the bravery of these incredible young men who went off and, discovered the New World, to tell you guys and maybe dismantle in some ways the arguments that a lot of these slavery apologists use. Now, for full transparency, I did not study any of this material in any academic sense. This is all self-study and comes from my understanding of the history that I have as a tour guide. I'd give walking tours. I tell, people the basic history of the Portuguese slave trade and Portuguese colonialism. So I think I have a decent understanding for an average person who's not a history academic in this field. Now, that means that in this video, I may make some mistakes. You're more than welcome to go in the comment section and share your opinions on the things I'm saying. I'm 100% certain that there will be some people who feel like they need to share their opinions, but that being out of the way, that disclaimer that I'm not an academic, I'm not a historian, I don't have any degree in Iberian history from the University of Sagondis. This is just my opinion. The first comment we have here is, and who sold the slaves? I'm going to make a concession here because to have good argumentation, you need to be able to make concessions. I can't sit here and say no, 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 and I'm 100% correct, and these, slavery apologists have no argument at all whatsoever. There is an argument here to be made that, well, the Black people in Africa sold themselves to the Portuguese. These African kings went and sold their own. Now, that would be a very strong argument, except for the fact that Black people didn't exist before the arrival of Europeans in Africa. Black is a social class. This is a socially constructed idea, the idea of blackness. There was no such thing as this Pan-African identity, Pan-Africanism, and the idea that two African people from different ethnic groups, from different tribes, with different religious practices, with different cultural practices, would have some type of allegiance to each other just because of the color of their skin, is a very modern idea. The actual creators of this idea of race were the Portuguese. And I find it very rich how a lot of slavery apologists here in Portugal will use this argument of, oh, well, these Black people sold themselves. They betrayed their own. Are all Europeans the same now? Are the Portuguese, the Spanish the same just because they look similar and they have a similar skin tone and they have similar cultural practices? Are they brothers now? Should they have some type of loyalty to each other just because of these things? Or was Europe the most violent place in the world for centuries and centuries, maybe millennia? I'm not a historian, once again. So violent, in fact, that you guys created incredible technology to get better at killing each other, stop your neighbors from killing you. This is, the history of Europe. If I were to go and say, well, white people have been killing themselves and, they've been murdering each other, these white people, for all of millennia, all of history, it would sound kind of silly. Because why would a German and a Frenchman have some type of affinity for each other when they're not the same people? They're not. Now, like I said, I need to make a concession. Yes, what we see today as Black people sold other Black people to the Portuguese, 100%. They were African kings who were making deals with the European powers, like the Portuguese, and signing peace treaties in which part of the deal was the Portuguese saying, okay, we'll provide you with this many goods over this many years if you provide us with this many enslaved people. That was 100% happening. This is highly documented. But oftentimes, it was out of a very human necessity for survival. And it was also a completely different system that these African kings were working under. The forced labor system in the vast majority of these African kingdoms was a lot different from what we think of today as a chattel slavery or a plantation slavery. Oftentimes it operated kind of as an Indian-style caste system, but it wasn't based solely on skin color. It was based on your ethnic group. So let's say you have two tribes. You have tribe A and you have tribe B. Now, tribe A conquers tribe B, and for the next 2, 3, 4 generations, the members who were formerly a part of tribe B will be seen as a lower social caste within the tribe's larger social hierarchy, and they will not have access to certain types of jobs within the larger society, and they will be stuck in, servicing the higher castes within that society. Now, we can agree that this is not a morally good system, of course, but these lower caste peoples were not seen as property or objects or cattle in the same way that they were under the European transatlantic slave chattel slavery system. And that's one thing that made transatlantic slavery so particularly brutal, was this idea of dehumanization, that these black people were no longer just forced laborers in a lower social caste. They were animals. They were cattle. They were like livestock. They weren't, they were stripped of their humanity, and they were treated as if they were livestock. The scale and the brutality of the transatlantic slave trade is, in my opinion, the greatest crime against humanity in human history. Now, the issue you have when you try to argue with a lot of these slavery apologists is because in Portuguese culture, this idea of being the explorers, this idea of being the, conquerors of these lands is integral to the Portuguese identity. You see this massive monument behind me, Padrão dos Descobrimentos. This to them is a symbol of pride. This to them is a symbol of their contribution to the world. A lot of Portuguese are very proud of the fact that they were the, quote, most successful colonizers. And trying to show people the other side of that, the other perspective of that, is very difficult when their entire identity is wrapped up in Heróis do Mar. This monument to them represents their bravery and their ingenuity and their sacrifice. To me, it represents rape, murder, and theft. And when a lot of people hear that, when a lot of people hear that part of their core identity represents something so evil to another person, they immediately turn their brain off. They are incapable of being able to separate these two things without discarding the evil. Now, as an American, I come from the United States of America, we have a terrible colonial history, a terrible slave history. My father's from Philadelphia. I'm quite familiar with the city of Philadelphia. I'm a big Philly sports fan. Go Sixers, go Birds, let's go. And I'm very proud that it was the original capital of the United States where the Declaration of Independence was signed. And I'm a very patriotic American, and being patriotic means that I am very proud of my historical figures in my history, like Thomas Jefferson, like George Washington, like Benjamin Franklin. But then you have to realize that Thomas Jefferson was a pedophile. Thomas Jefferson had a 14-year-old girl that he had enslaved by the name of Sally Hemings, who he fathered multiple children with. This is an evil man. He was not just raping this 14-year-old girl, she was his property. So she literally could not definitionally consent to any actions that were happening, even if she was 18 years old. That's why if a prison guard has a sexual encounter with a prisoner, it is always sexual assault, because there's a power imbalance there. This man owned a 14-year-old girl and impregnated her multiple times, several times. This is proven through DNA evidence. So you have to be able to separate the good from the bad in a person's life, and then take it all in at once. You can't separate the good from the bad and then discard the bad. And that's what I think a lot of Portuguese are guilty of, is separating the positive aspects, the ingenuity and the bravery of these young men, because I will admit, I'm sympathetic to the idea of the Portuguese being proud of this history. I think people deserve to be proud of their heritage. And the Portuguese did make a lot of contributions to the world stage, especially between the years of 1400 and 1800. Huge contributions. They were the first European leaders. They were the first Europeans to arrive in a half dozen major countries today. First Europeans to arrive in India, China, Australia, Japan, Indonesia, the Philippines, I believe. Now, of course, be proud of that. Be proud of your guys' sailor history. But then when someone of color or someone in general goes to you and tells you that this symbol right here, do you see that? Do you see that symbol right there? That's a sword. That's not a cross. The Portuguese will tell you that they went and they spread Jesus Christ and they spread the religion of Christianity, and that they were, the most moral of colonizers. And yet, when they built this monument, I believe in the 1960s, it was built under the Salazar dictatorship, they didn't put Jesus Christ on the cross right on the front. They didn't put this symbol of, turning the other cheek and spreading love across the planet. They put the sword. And that is why a lot of us people of color, a lot of us black people, we see this as a symbol of rape, a symbol of murder, a symbol of theft, a symbol of domination, because that is kind of what you're saying with that. When you put a sword on the front of your monument dedicated towards colonialism, you are not being so couth. You're not being so tongue-in-cheek. You're kind of saying it out loud for all of us to hear. And then you have the gall to then say, oh no! That's not what it's about. What are you talking about? No, it's about our bravery and about how, and about how we created the map of the modern world. Okay, sure, whatever. And don't get me wrong, I love this country. I love Portugal. I love the Portuguese culture, and I love the Portuguese people, to be honest. This is a critique. This is not me coming here and hating on the country of Portugal and me coming here and, bashing them and shitting on them. No. I love this country. I feel like it's kind of on my home in a way. I've grown up here since I was 14 years old. I speak Portuguese fluently. I feel very culturally Portuguese, as I mentioned in my last video. But you have to take the good with the bad. And this is not taught in any of the schools. The topics that I bring up on my tours, my Black History tours, are not taught in most of the schools. Most of the African Black people here, people from Cabo Verde, people from Angola, people from Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, São Tomé, they do not know the history that I'm telling on my tours every day about the amount of people that were trafficked through the city of Lisbon, about the amount of Black people who lived in the city of Lisbon, that the first ever predominantly Black neighborhood in all of Europe was here in the city of Lisbon. It was a neighborhood called Mucambo, all right? These are things that should be taught widely, and they're not, because the Portuguese can't have evil as a part of their story. They can't admit to the evil that happened, because that's too difficult. It's too difficult and it's too nuanced, it's too complicated to be able to look back at your history and take the good and the bad and consume them both rather than discarding the bad. It's too difficult. You see that with MAGA today in the United States. You see that with Donald Trump going into, the African American History Museum and saying, it's too negative, folks. Why can't we talk about the good things? Can we talk about how we ended slavery? Can we talk about actually how we freed the slaves? How about that? Are you serious? Slaves built the White House. They built the Washington Monument. They built half of Washington, D.C., our capital. They built the house that you're standing in right now, making this speech from, and you're going to sit here and say, oh, we're too negative. People that were owned as property for 400 years. It's disgusting. It's disgusting, and it's the reason why Black people are so disadvantaged today, is because there's this inability to admit that Black people systematically around the world have been fucked over and screwed in every way, shape, and form possible. There has been a systemic effort to keep Black people down, to keep Black people from success, because there is a deep level of bigotry and hatred that has been ingrained in European culture for Black people since the 1500s, since they needed to justify this terrible, disgusting crime against humanity they were committing in their Christian minds, that we're good Christians because they're not human. They're not real people. They're cattle. They're property. They can't read. They're not capable of complex thought like we are. And a lot of them had this Descartes type of idea that they couldn't really feel pain. Black people don't feel the pain the way, Blacks don't feel pain the way that white people do. They're not capable of feeling pain. They're not capable of suffering in the way we are. That was the excuse. You see this even today. You see this with how Black people are not taken seriously when they go to hospitals. You see this how across so many different aspects of life, how this affects us today. Then there's the Kamala Harris quote. That's very funny. It's a big meme, the coconut tree. Oh, we didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. We exist in the context of everything that came before us. And haha, hardy har, it's funny and cute and, brat, slay, diva. But it's true. It's fundamentally true that people in society don't just pop into existence. We didn't pop into existence here with nothing before us. We are right where we are as a direct result of all of the steps that we took previous. And the steps that were taken and the path that Black people were set on by Europeans, not just Black people living in European countries, Black people living in the United States, Black people living in South Africa, but the entire continent of Africa. The reason that these places are in the state that they are now is due to colonialism. It's due to this inability for these Europeans to accept Black success, to be able to have to stamp it out wherever they saw it. You see this with the Tulsa bombings. You see this with the bombings in Philadelphia. I know this is a bit of a silly rant. It's just a little frustrating. And you see a lot of my comment sections are full with the fucking, Reconquista's strongest soldiers, bro. A lot of them are double chin losers, I will say, but a lot of them are people with real opinions. These are their real opinions, and I just hope to be able to show them my perspective without calling them specifically to their faces evil, because I don't think that someone that holds a lot of these slavery apologist beliefs are evil. They've just been programmed with a specific narrative that they've been taught since the time they were born to have pride in their country, which is fine. Be proud of where you come from. Be proud of your heritage. But don't take that pride and sacrifice truth with it. Don't. Speaking of sacrificing truth, oh my God, these fucking Hebrew Israelites in my comments, oh my God, bro. Also, black folks, please, can we not do the whole black people were in America and that dinosaurs aren't real? I'm gonna read you another comment. Y'all still saying this lie. The Atlantic is the most treacherous ocean to traverse, yet millions of people were brought across waters and then taught how to tend the land by people who also weren't native to the land. Sure, Jan. I said, highly documented. It happened because it's highly documented, and it happened. Dinosaurs are also highly documented. Your point? And I say, yes, bro, dinosaurs are real. And he responds, both of your responses are nonsense. Stay lost in the sauce. Oh, brother. Having done this tour for 6 months, I have met some folks who have some misinformed positions. There are people who think that the Egyptians who built the pyramids looked like Nigerian people, looked like sub-Saharan African people. They did not. I'm sorry. Black people are people, just like anyone else. And just like the Portuguese have this narrative that they love to stick to, they want to give themselves this story to make themselves feel special and important. Black folks are not immune to that same fault and logic. So a lot of black Americans have these crazy, wacky ideas that, black Americans are the true people of Israel, and the black Americans are the true Native Americans, and that black Americans are, the Egyptians who built the Egyptian pyramids, and the black Americans are actually Vikings. And oh my God, like there's little to no evidence of any of these claims. I actually had an interesting encounter on the tram the other day. So I'm on the tram the other day, this is maybe a month ago, and I had 2 or 3 days previous to this given a tour to this really nice interracial couple. The husband was Swedish, the wife was Ugandan, I believe, and super, super nice folks. Came on the tour, really enjoyed it. And then 2-3 days later, I see them on the tram. Oh, hey, what's up? How you guys doing? Very nice to see you guys again. And, we get to talking. And the husband is telling me, oh, yeah, we came to Belém and we did this. Oh, apologize, sorry. We did this tuk-tuk tour. And we asked the guy doing the tour, giving the tour about black history. And he didn't really know anything. And he kind of talked about the Jews and about how, Jewish people were expelled from Iberia in the 1500s. And, we kind of put together that he didn't really know much black history here in Portugal. And I said, that's funny because, and I start whispering at this point. The tram is quite quiet. Sorry, I apologize. You want to do an interview? Do you like Portugal?
Ik ben Portuguese.
You're Portuguese?
I come from Portugal. Huh?
Ik ben Berliner.
Berliner?
Yeah, JF Kennedy. You know John F. Kennedy? Ik ben Berliner.
Berliner?
Yeah.
Dan redest du het, oder?
What was I saying? Oh, yeah, so the tram is not very full at this point, at like 10% capacity. So I'm still being careful. I'm being low with my voice. And I lean in and I say, funnily enough, there's this kind of group of crazy American people who believe that black Americans are the real chosen people of Israel, that they're the real Jews. And he says, oh, really? And I start going on and explaining about the black Israelites, and I told him about an experience that my parents had in Baltimore where they screamed at my mom and dad. I'm interracial. My mother's white. You're going to chase this couple down the street with a megaphone and scream how, the man's a race traitor because he has a white wife. Whatever, bro. Seems like you're making a good use of your time there. But I'm telling him this, and from maybe 3 meters to the right of me, 4 or 5 seats down the tram, I hear this lady say, "Excuse me, young man." And, interesting looking lady. She was maybe 6 foot tall, slender, could have been a model, looked, a little bit darker skin, a little bit darker than me. And she's saying, you know what? I am Jewish. I'm from Ethiopia, and I can track my lineage back 2,500 years. And I'm saying, oh, that's 100% true. I, know certainly that there's a lot of, East Africans who are Jewish, Ethiopian Jews, a lot of, 100% fact. This is 100% true. And then she's going on and on and on about, you have power in your melanin, young man. The white man tells the story. They make all of the history books for the classes, and they have lied to you, young man. Those white men are not the real Jews. And she's going on and going on. And this continues for 5 minutes about, how powerful you are, and you have no clue, young man. And the people with the money make the story. And we end up stepping off the tram, it gets to the final stop, gets to Praça da Figueira, and the Swedish guy is literally just looking at me the entire time, and he's like, I don't know what the fuck is going on here. And we get off the tram, and we're still talking. She's like now almost shouting in the street in front of like all these people walking past, and she's like, you know what? Read Hitler. He knew what was going on. He knew the Jews were ruining his country. They were ruining Germany. Read Hitler. He knew the truth. And I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck did I just get myself into? This black Jewish lady is screaming about what? Are we serious, bro? Bro, she was like Kanye's strongest disciple, I swear. Speaking of Kanye, I'm going to see Kanye in a couple weeks. Nice little segue. But she was definitely a Nazi nigga. She was on that Hitler timing. Interesting story. But please, it's really obnoxious, and especially there's a lot of anti-blackness, really deep-rooted in this, that, oh, I'm not African. You really think that my people, I'm not African, I'm Native American, and all of these things. It's like you just want to feel special. You just want a story to be able to tell yourself that you're special and the narrative is wrong and you've been lied to, which you certainly have. This is 100% truth, that there's more to the story than they're telling us. There are documents that have been lost telling us, all types of horrific things that happened to us. The documents that have been lost, though, I do not believe are telling us that we're really the true chosen people of Israel, or that we're really the indigenous Americans. This is ridiculous. Please, my fellow black folks, I'm imploring you, I'm begging you. We did not build the pyramids. And when I say we, I mean sub-Saharan black people who were brought to the United States to work as slaves, and whose descendants are me and my fellow black Americans. We were not the ones who built the pyramids. It's okay. We didn't have to be. But yeah, that's about it, I guess. If you guys... Oh, and the dinosaurs not being real thing. These people are fucking whack jobs, I swear. These people are whack jobs, I swear. By the way, if you guys are interested in my Black History Tour, make sure to, check it out. Link in my Linktree, in my bio, where you can, book a little ticket and come on a walking tour with me throughout sunny, beautiful Lisbon. We're not coming here. Fuck this place. No. Belém is a very nice spot. Very, very nice place. I'm just not a huge fan of the massive, glorious sword that was used to, draw the blood of my ancestors. Jesus Christ. No, but really. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment your thoughts. Have a little debate down there in the comment section. It's really good for the algorithm. And I guess I'll see you guys soon. Next video will probably be in the Algarve or something, so should be interesting. Might go out to Albufeira, Rua de Ouro. Something like that. Appreciate it. You guys have a good rest of your whatever time you're watching this.